join the top 1% of a group of people in the practice of a skill or craft, you have to practice for 10,000 hours or more. Do you want to become a great violinist, as my son does? 10,000 hours. You want to become a great soccer player? 10,000 hours. Great ballerina? 10,000 hours. And the rule is true, but, there's a small little but. It's based on the assumption that the set of rules that hold the game don't change. So why is Serena Williams, without question, the most powerful tennis player we've seen ever in the sport of tennis? Simple. Serena Williams has done her 10,000 hours in tennis over and over and over again. In fact, if you ever played a game of tennis with Serena, I don't know if you know this, but at her peak, she can serve a ball in your direction at 147 kilometers per hour. Now what that means is you'd be standing on the adjacent end, you'd be bobbing from side to side. I don't know why they do that, but they do. And you'd be holding your tennis racket, and all you would hear is shoo. And you'd still be waiting, right? She's phenomenal. Why is Lionel Messi the greatest soccer player of our generation? I think Cristiano's great, but you can't argue the skill level of Lionel Messi with Cristiano Ronaldo. Simple. The soccer game has been the same way for the past 600 years. The ball is round, the playing circuit is square or rectangular, and the penalty is still 18 inches from the start spot. Those rules haven't changed. FIFA in 2017 is still arguing about whether or not they can introduce goal line technology. Just think about that. In the game of tennis, this has been the layout of a tennis court for 200 years of tennis history. The biggest change they saw was in 1986 when the WTA, World Tennis Association, published a circular. The circular read that it used to hold in tennis that as you play the game, when you serve, you have to keep one foot on the ground. They said now you can serve and lift both feet. Unbelievable! How do you deal with this kind of change? Here we have to deal with Zuma. Anyway, I can say that I'm Zulu. So the point here is that the game of tennis has been the game of tennis since the game of tennis has been the game of tennis. Not much has changed. If you want to understand particularly what separates great organizations from mediocre ones, it's important to start with this thing called the context. Context is very simply why great organizations believe they exist in the first place. You see, mediocre organizations exist for this thing called market share, and I'll explain it in a minute. Does anyone here know why the company and the name Ox Baron is significant in our conversation here today? Any person? It's interesting that you're all shaking your heads, because if I'd asked this question perhaps 200 years ago, thereabout, it would be like asking you who is Apple today. Ox Baron, at the turn of the century before last, specifically around 1889, we're taught in the theory of finance, was the world's largest company by turnover. In 1889, they were a $125 million US business. I want you to just think about that. $125 million US. I mean, if you assume the 10-to-1 exchange rate between the rand and the dollar, we're talking over $1 billion rand here. No head office, no conference, no CRM, no management structure, no operations, no HR, no team building, definitely no team building. No complex systems, no IT, no SAP, no meetings, no balance scorecard, just a group of people running around getting receipts and bringing them back into the office. And they were a $125 million business. What did they do? They made these things called ox wagon wheels, and here's what made them great. See, in the Midwest and Americas, they had a specific problem. The ox wagon wheel used to rot. Why? Because wood is a living, breathing substance. In the Midwest, if you've ever been, you notice that the temperatures in summer can soar above 40. In winter, drop below freezing. Wood, a living, breathing substance moving in an environment of extreme temperatures, tends to shorten its lifespan. But the actual insight here was the ox wagon wheel was bolted into the ox wagon using a wooden nut. Wood rubbing on wood even shortens the lifespan even farther. And so they bought a tiny little company called Lawrence Mass & Sons, and this small little business based in Denver used to make wheel nuts out of steel and later aluminium. And because they made their wheels out of steel and aluminium nuts, their wheels lasted longer, their customers bought them more, they accumulated market share, and then their competitors couldn't compete, so they started buying from them, this thing called vertical integration. And because they started buying from them, they became the world's largest company in a dominant mode of moving, which was ox wagon wheels. But times change, right? Consumers change, markets change. The turn of the century comes, the combustion engine is invented. The combustion engine fuels the Model T by Henry Ford. What does he do? He then says we want to put a car in every single home in the United States. He changes, by the way, the whole way we move goods, him and the railway industry. This company battling for survival realizes that their market has changed, so they hire a young man. His name is 23. This is around the 1920s now. And they say to him, we'd like you to help us with our business and our problem. And his job was head of innovation. In 1923, head of innovation. And he went and ran the innovation office, and 6 months later, he marches into the boardroom of Oxbaring, and he says to them, I've figured out what the problem is, but even better, I know what the solution is. He says, the problem is we've spent 80 years in our business getting really good at something that in 20 years, no one's going to need. He says, if we don't change and change now, we're going to be in serious trouble. Then he says, but I know what we should change to. And this thing that we should change to is a mode of transport, a type of wheel that uses polyethylene, steel, rubber, and plastic. They didn't listen. They thought he was a bit of a madman. The literature says they parted ways. Today we know it means they fired him. And he left, went home, and he raised what we today call venture funding. Back then it was called family, friends, and fools. They gave him a little bit of money, not the biggie, to go and start his own business. And to prototype the idea, he built a bicycle, and on the wheels of the bicycle, he prototyped the very first type of wheel that was ever made in this format. His name was Jeremy Boyd. His last name was Dunlop. He created Dunlop tires, today the world's third largest producer of tires. In fact, were it not for Jeremy Boyd, there is argument about whether or not we would even be using tires today. Point? When we think about market share in business, we often miss the point. You see, this thing here is an MGG, right? There's a couple of these. There's a Logitech, there's a Perfect Q. All they do is effectively the same stuff. They plug it into my computer, I click a button, and it moves. It makes me look really slick. Makes you think you're getting your money's worth. But if I were to ask what is the market share of the company that has produced this fantastic product, it would depend on how many other companies make exactly the same product in it. The deeper question is, what purpose does this thing do? Because if I ask what is the purpose share, the answer there is different. So most of you here deal in very competitive markets where people are trying to plan their estates, plan their lives, create a little bit of wealth, build legacies for their families. That is the purpose for what we do. We can always argue market share based on product, but the purpose is the purpose. What do I think is the single biggest thing that is a consideration for those of you in this room to think about? How many of you here have clients that are holding investments in blockchain technology, particularly in any Bitcoin or bitmaps? I hold some. None of you? I spend a week a month in London and here. And I can tell you that we're probably about 5, maybe 6 years, but it'll come. And what's happening there is this amazing move of people to try and move money into blockchain spaces, specifically on bit type of currencies. So I move my money at a 1-to-1, and when I get it back, there are no fees. And often when the currency appreciates, I'm not paying an arbitrage person on the other end. And so a lot of people are beginning to look at that as an alternative form of saying, how else do I create wealth? Now, it'll take a long time before it filters into your environment. By the time it does, you're all here very well-qualified, smart people. You would have created a product that can service that market. But it's always important to think about what are the alternatives, what is the market share, and what is our purpose share. I love sharing this example, so if you'll allow me. In our company, we have the privilege of doing work for the world's largest producer of condoms. You all know them. You're at conference. They're called It's a joke! I wrote it at the back. I thought it would work. I did. It's a joke. Come on. It's this interesting little company called Durax. Started as a German company named after the great man Durezo himself. And then, of course, much later on, the Americans who bought it decided that the name didn't sound cool, so they turned it into Durax. They make 59 million condoms, they do, a month. and they only have 21% of the global market share. 59 million condoms. I said to them, where are they going? Because I've got to move. I'm leaving. If I find out where they're, I'm leaving. They wouldn't tell me where it's going. What they did tell me is they have one container with 6 flavors that gets shipped to Nkandla. We don't know where. No, stop. We don't know where. We don't know for whom. They didn't give me the P.O. box address. One container, 6 flavors. Don't you love these high-grade jokes? I love it. I love it. So anyway. So over there doing some work with Durex, and Durex is a very interesting problem. So 21% of the global market share, they're doing really well, and they go, so our world and our business is shaped in the physical construct. And if you think about it, it actually makes sense. Durex is only a physical manifestation product. You don't need it on a digital life. Durex goes, but the world is becoming increasingly online. People are taking their lives increasingly online. What would it look like if our product existed in the online space? Just think about that. And a single question they had to ask themselves was based on this. You see, on the internet, there are a few things you can do and can't do. On the internet, you can evoke the sense of sight, which means on a WhatsApp call or a Skype call, I can see you. I can evoke the sense of audio, I can hear you. What I cannot yet do is I cannot taste, nor can I touch or smell. But Durex says, what would happen if you could? What would happen if I could reach over an IP address and touch you in your studio? And you enjoyed it. Because you would. So I gotta tell you, so they sent us, myself and my business partners. My business partner's name is Christian Foster. He's a CISI, and he's from Bloemfontein. So I said this to him all the time. I said, you know, Christian, you are from Bloemfontein, which means just because of that, you already qualify, you are previously disadvantaged. You don't have to prove anything. And then you are white male, which means you are also now presently disadvantaged. So when we apply for a BE, you must score twice, right? So anyway, so they sent myself and Christian. We were doing some balance sheet, some capital restructure work for them, and now, in fact, in our enterprise development fund, they're busy putting some money with us. And I said to them, just make sure it's safe money. They've agreed. But so they sent us over to their facility in Australia, New South Wales. Met the guy whose video you've just watched, Ben Moore, South African, went to Pretoria Boys. Would you believe it? Wanted to start a tech company here in South Africa. There was no funding. He left, went to live in the UK. By chance, found himself a little job, and then he moved to Australia, and now he runs the entire innovation facility for all of Durex. Phenomenal story, right? So anyway, got to meet Ben, and Ben says, boys, let's have a chat about it. Says, I'm going to give you guys a pair. South Africans, don't tell. So he gave myself and Christian a pair for free. Look, not for each other, but we got a pair. No. So came home, and you know, my wife, God bless her, we've been together 8 going 9 years now. Went to my wife and I said, baby, you know, my wife, by the way, does get quite perturbed at my rate of travel. So I said, you know, we have issues of mutual concern. I'd like to believe I can address those issues. And then I introduced it as you would a Speaker of Parliament, and she loved it. And then a fortnight later, I was traveling. I can't remember where I was going. And I called her up and I said, baby, let's try. She says, yeah. Hey, it works. Ha. I mean, they've got some issues with how it handles lubrication, but that's a different story. That's not moisturizer. It's a joke. The question, by the way, is Durex is saying 59 million condoms they make a month. They'd like by the year 2020 to start making 1 million of these a month. 1 million of these. And just think about what that does, right? It moves the entire market in how you and I engage in things about intimacy. So they've asked themselves the question not only market share, but purpose share. And the broader question, I can't answer it for you, but the broader question for you to ask yourself is every single day when you come to work and you do what you do, what is the purpose for what you do what you do? And if the organization has a specific purpose and our job is to drive for that, then what is my share in making sure that that organization achieves it? And that's a personal question that only you can answer. The second question we found around great organizations was this thing called culture. And what we found is that organizations that tend to be average embrace what we call a passion culture. And I know you use this word. Many people love this word. I'll explain it in a minute. Whereas great organization use this thing we call an obsessive culture. Now, the thing about the word passion, and it is an emotive statement I'm about to make here, but it is true. If you were sitting in this conference 20, 30 years ago, having a conversation about how you're competing in your markets, and someone came up here and said, guys, if we want to beat our competitors, actually all we have to do is be passionate, you would beat your competitors. Because then nobody was talking about passion. Nobody was connecting the emotive reason with which we come to work to how we enable ourselves to deliver for our clients. Now, I've had the privilege of working with you and all of your competitors. And I can tell you now that at every single one of their conferences, they're all saying the way they're going to beat you out of your market is if they are passionate. So the point here is if you're passionate, you're average now. This is how it's done by everybody. What we mean when we say passion, I think, is we mean obsessed. We mean a group of people that are willing to get it done because it needs to get done. Not because it goes into a scorecard or HR might find out about it or I get measured on it at the end of the quarter, but if it's going to make a difference in the life of the customer, an impact in the life of the organization, I'm going to get it done.